if you are to describe three adjectives that of the three characteristics of the city that made a Homo sapiens such a successful species in Earth, which three adjectives would you choose? Like we talked about proximity. Yeah, other
Right.
than that.
Proximity, which is a noun, but
Mhm.
so you have proximity and density. Those are two nouns, but the three adjectives, I guess, would be tolerant, collaborative,
Mhm.
and creative.
Creative, yeah.
So you and I spoke beforehand, and I showed you, I think I sent you the 5 lenses that we use for our program, right?
Mhm.
And so one is these are the things we look at everything through when we're studying the city. So there's the form of the city was one lens, because it's about planning and architecture and grids and how you organize functions of a city. There's the resilient city, which is about environmental sustainability, environmental justice, climate change, sea level rise, asthma, energy, all of that, right? Recycling. Resilient city. There's the just city, which is about social justice and how you organize the city so that it serves more people more equitably. There's resilient city, form of the city, just city, city of memory. The city contains memory, it contains history, it contains statues and memorials, over which in America we're having a lot of debates over whose stories get told and how they get told. But it contains memory, which creates identity, right? And then maybe the most important is the city of creativity. Because of all those synergies which are created by all that diversity, all sorts of interesting things emerge. Jazz, as we know it, yes, it comes from the Mississippi. It comes from, all sorts of inputs, but it gets consolidated in New Orleans, and it gets disseminated in Chicago and New York and Cincinnati, right? So jazz exists because of cities. Broadway, I mean, we call it Broadway, right? We name it by a street that runs up the spine of New York, of Manhattan. Broadway theater is invented because of the diversity and the tolerance and creativity of an immigrant city, right? It has, and a migrant city. It has Black culture in it. It has Jewish culture in it. It has Italian culture in it. It has Irish culture in it. It has, I think most famously right now, Puerto Rican culture in it, right? Hamilton. You don't get a Hamilton without New York City. So I think creativity might be the most important word.
Yeah, because creativity is one of the ways to self-express for the different ethnicities and ways to express oneself as an individual. And in order to a city to be tolerant and collaborative and to unite into one, I think expression is also very important. So
absolutely,
those 3 adjectives you mentioned are all intertwined to make Homo sapiens.
That's a great observation. Yeah, they're all kind of sides of the same coin. They're all you don't have one without the others.
True, because if the city is tolerant, people give up more space and people become more open-minded to different creations, right? Like when you look at like other cities that is closed-minded, people cannot fully express what's in their mind because most of them get tabooed. Yeah.
Yes, and I think there, in the 19th century, there were all sorts of, this big cities, metropolises were new, right? Mm-hmm. At least big modern cities where there was industry and automobiles and transit and tall buildings. And so there was a lot of discussion about cities, especially in Europe and after the Industrial Revolution. And And there was this term which people used, which was called anomie, which is a French word, which anomie, anomie, which was a sad term. It was a term about the anonymity that drives a certain sadness when you're in the city. You feel like you're not seen because there are so many people around you. And that was a new experience to be lost amidst all those people, right? But there's a flip side of that, which is when you're in a small town, everybody knows you, but everybody knows you within a very specific framework, whether it's religious or cultural or familial, right? Everybody knows you as the son of so-and-so, or as the daughter, or as the mother of so-and-so. And that determines your identity. When you go to the city, you're liberated by that anonymity, and you can choose to be whom you want to be. So there is both a burden that's created by the size of a metropolis and an opportunity, which is to redefine yourself. One of the most famous books in American literature is The Great Gatsby. And Gatsby comes to New York and nobody really knows who he is. He completely reinvents himself. And you find out that he's lied about his past completely to become a new person, for good or for ill. And there is that opportunity in the city. So yeah, you can feel a little bit lost and a little bit anonymous, but at the same time, you can shape your destiny and you can be liberated to become whom you want to be, if the city is tolerant and collaborative and, all those things we talked about.